Hello and welcome. Whether you're listening in the quiet hours of the night or enjoying a peaceful moment during the day, this gentle journey invites you to step softly into a world long past, yet still warm with human presence. Make yourself comfortable. Let your breath slow and deepen. Allow the noise of the modern world to fade as we drift into the steady rhythm of daily life in ancient Rome. This is a serene exploration of ordinary moments in an extraordinary civilization. Take a slow, steady breath. As you exhale, imagine the early morning light spilling across stone streets. Shops begin to open. Footsteps echo beneath archways. The scent of bread drifts from a nearby bakery as the city awakens. In this peaceful retelling, there is no rush and no grandeur to impress, and only gentle observation. We move slowly through homes, markets, and public spaces, noticing how people lived, worked, rested, and connected with one another. Picture yourself standing in a Roman neighborhood as the day unfolds. Families gather around simple meals, merchants arrange their goods. Water flows softly through fountains, and voices carry in calm conversation. Though emperors and armies once shaped history, here we focus on quieter moments, the routines that filled each day and gave structure to life. You remain safely where you are, yet you may sense the steady pulse of the city, a civilization built not only on power, but on habit, community, and shared experience. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore the daily life of ancient Rome, how people dressed, ate, worked, socialized, and found rest. We'll move gently through streets and homes, baths and forums, letting history unfold like a sunlit afternoon in a timeless city. For now, settle in, breathe deeply, and allow this peaceful journey into ancient Rome to begin. Part 1: Dawn in the Eternal City. At the break of dawn in ancient Rome, a pale glow silhouettes the rooftops and temple columns of the city's 7 hills. The first birds begin to sing in the cypress trees, and a cool mist clings to the Tiber River as it winds its way through the waking capital. In this delicate early light, the city is already stirring. Living in a world before electric lamps, Romans are accustomed to seize the daylight. Many have risen even before the sun, determined to begin their tasks early and finish their business by sundown. Some wake from habit or duty, others because the city simply will not let them sleep any longer. Indeed, the poet Martial wryly complained that the everyday racket of Rome at dawn, the laughter of people passing in the street, the cries of hawkers and vendors, the rumble of early carts on cobbles, even the shouts of school teachers drilling their pupils, all these noises came right to his bedside, robbing him of his last moments of rest. Now, as sunlight gilds the highest buildings, the narrow lanes of the city begin to fill with life. In the crowded Subura district, where many plebeian families live in multi-story apartment houses, insulae, a humble shopkeeper pushes open a wooden shutter and steps out onto a tiny balcony. From his 4th-floor lodging, he can see a pinkish dawn sky between the tiled roofs across the street. He breathes in the cool air before the day's heat arrives. Inside his one-room apartment, his wife is lighting a small clay oil lamp to chase away the shadows. Their children stir on mats laid out on the floor. The day is beginning for this family in a modest, familiar way. The wife hands her husband a clay jug and he heads down the steep common stairs to fetch water. On the street, he joins others at the public fountain on the corner. Most Romans do not have running water at home, especially not those living on the upper floors of insules, so the public fountains are a vital gathering spot each morning. Cool water pours continuously from a spout carved like a lion's head, fed by one of the city's great aqueducts. A small cluster of neighbors waits their turn, exchanging quiet greetings and yawning smiles. The shopkeeper fills his jug and splashes a little water on his face to wake himself fully. All around, the sounds of morning grow. From a nearby bakery comes the hearty aroma of bread just pulled from wood-fired ovens and the muffled thump of the baker kneading dough. Across the lane, a metal worker's shop rings with the bright clang of hammer on anvil as the blacksmith and his apprentices begin their labor. The calls of itinerant peddlers echo down the street. One sells fresh figs from the countryside. Another offers hot chickpea porridge from a steaming pot balanced on his cart. Elsewhere in the city, on a quieter, wealthier street, the scene is more genteel but no less busy. In a spacious marble-floored domus on the Palatine Hill, a rich senator's household is also greeting the day. Within the atrium of this grand home, a rectangular front hall open to the sky, pale dawn light filters through the opening in the roof and reflects in the shallow pool impluvium below. Slaves quietly remove the cover from the impluvium, letting yesterday's collected rainwater catch the new light. The master of the house, already awake, steps barefoot onto the cool tiles. Clad in a simple tunic for now, he makes his way to a small household shrine in the corner of the atrium, the lararium. In the soft illumination, the painted figurines of the household gods, the lares and penetes, can just be seen. The senator gently lights a stick of incense and murmurs a prayer. He offers a brief libation of wine and a pinch of salted flour, giving thanks for the dawn and asking the guardian spirits to watch over his family this day. It is a quiet, private ritual he performs each morning, one shared by countless Roman households in their own modest way. With piety observed, the senator's day moves on to worldly affairs. He dresses with the help of a household slave. This morning he must don the formal toga, a voluminous woolen garment that the attendant deftly wraps and drapes over his tunic. The toga's broad purple stripe, the laticlave, announces his rank as a member of the Senate. Elsewhere in the house, the senator's wife supervises a few servants in the kitchen and dining room. They set out a simple breakfast. Yesterday's bread to be eaten with a dab of honey or a bit of sheep cheese, a handful of dates and olives, and cups of watered wine. Romans call this first meal ientaculum, and it is usually light. This household is no exception. They break their fast sparingly. The senator eats only a little bread and fruit, just enough to stave off hunger until the main meal later. His wife nibbles a few olives and perhaps some cheese. Their children, if young, might be given a cup of warm milk or a spoonful of porridge. There is no lengthy breakfast gathering. The family eats, standing or sitting casually, not yet assembled around a formal table. In fact, many days the adults might even skip solid food at breakfast altogether, content with a cup of water or diluted sour wine. They know there will be ample feasting in the evening. Morning is a time to begin work, not to indulge the appetite. One thing the family does not do this morning is bathe. In Rome, bathing is an afternoon activity enjoyed at the public thermae. Thus, personal grooming at dawn is quick. A splash of water on the face, perhaps a rub of perfumed oil, and a brisk scrape with a strigil, a curved metal tool for those meticulous about cleanliness, and one is ready. The senator briefly reviews a few wax tablets and scrolls delivered at dawn. News travels early in Rome. But soon it is time for his first duty of the day, the salutatio. Each morning, Roman nobles like him hold a sort of informal audience for their clients, poorer dependents, who come to pay respects and seek patronage. No sooner has the sun fully risen than a knock sounds at the heavy oak door of the mansion. The porter, Eonator, opens it, and in file several men of lower social standing, clients of this senator, dressed in freshly whitened togas, some a bit threadbare. They gather in the atrium, standing beneath the colonnaded gallery as they await acknowledgment. The senator greets them individually, smiling politely. One by one, each man steps forward to hail him. Salve, Patronus. They offer respectful salutations, perhaps congratulations, on any recent successes or good wishes for the day. In turn, the senator offers a gracious word and the true purpose of their visit, the sportula, a small basket typically containing food or a little money. A waiting slave hands each client this token of the patron's support, perhaps a loaf of bread and some coin, or a portion of leftover meat from the kitchen stores. The men express their thanks. For some, this patron's aid is a critical part of making ends meet in the city. This morning ritual, the salutatio, has been performed in Roman houses for centuries. It reinforces the social fabric, patron and clients bound by mutual obligation. The senator enjoys enhanced status by showing he has many followers. The clients gain material help and the backing of a powerful ally. Formalities complete, the clients depart after bidding their patron farewell, and a few stay on to accompany the senator for the next part of his day. It is common for loyal clients to walk with their patron to the forum or even attend him through the day's business, a visible entourage that advertises his importance. So, as the senator steps out of his doorway into the city street, a half-dozen humble followers trail respectfully behind. Out in the street, the city has fully come alive. The hour is still early, perhaps the second hour of the day by the sundial, around 7 a.m. But Rome's streets are as busy as a modern city at noon. The senator's neighborhood on the Palatine is an upscale quarter. His domus stands among other aristocratic homes and gardens, where the streets are relatively clean and patrolled by household guards. As he walks downhill toward the city center, he passes a small group of well-dressed children on their way to school, escorted by a Greek tutor. The children carry wooden tablets coated in wax and bronze style for writing. They chatter among themselves, but fall silent and bow their heads respectfully to let the senator pass. He gives them a kindly nod in return. Soon the senator's path converges with busier lanes, and the press of the crowd grows thicker. Romans of every rank and origin are now flooding the thoroughfares, all with errands to do. There are no automobiles, of course, only people on foot and the occasional mount or human-drawn litter. Wheeled carts and wagons, which one might expect to rattle through ancient streets, are actually mostly banned inside Rome during the daytime, an edict from Julius Caesar to reduce traffic chaos. So, apart from a few construction carts carrying building materials under special permit, the roads belong to pedestrians. A patrician lady passes by, riding in a cushioned litter carried by 4 stout slaves, the curtains of her sedan chair drawn back to give her a view of the lively street. On the opposite side, a unit of soldiers from the city cohort strides past in formation, perhaps en route to relieve the night watch. The bronze of their helmets and the points of their spears gleam in the slanting sun as townsfolk make way for them. For the most part, however, the streets belong to the common folk hustling about their day. Shopkeepers have thrown open their shutters. One can see the dim interiors of workshops and stores at street level, each open-fronted to the road. Here is a sandal maker already sitting outside on a low stool, cutting leather thongs for new shoes. Next door, a scent of perfume wafts out from an unguent seller's stall, where delicate glass bottles of scented oils catch the light. At a corner, an old man tends a small brazier on which chickpeas roast. He sells a paper cone of these warm, salted nuts to passers-by for a few quadrans, copper coins. A cluster of young men, perhaps day laborers hoping for hire, linger near him to buy a cheap snack and talk gossip. They laugh about a rumor that a famous gladiator will be performing next week, or about a silly mishap one saw at the baths yesterday. Such casual street corner chatter spreads news quickly through the city. Everywhere is motion and noise. Housewives and slaves hurry by with baskets, heading to the markets to buy food for the day's meals. It's customary to shop daily for fresh produce. Street vendors sing out the prices of their goods. "Ostrady, fresh oysters," calls one carrying a bucket of them. "Hot sausages, good for breakfast," shouts another, tending a portable grill. Over the din, the creak of a water wheel turning in a public fountain plaza provides a steady rhythm, and now and then the distinct call of "Attendez, mind your head," is heard as litter bearers or porters carrying heavy loads insist on a path through the crowd. Amid this urban hustle, one must be careful where to step. The cobbled streets are uneven and often littered with debris. Stray dogs nose at cabbage leaves and discarded fruit rinds along the gutters. In some areas, raised stepping stones are placed at intervals for crossing when rainstorms turn the street to mud. Even in dry weather, one might dodge a pile of manure left by a horse or mule earlier that morning. And from above, occasionally a warning shout in Latin, caveat, watch out, might precede someone emptying a chamber pot from an upper window into the alley below. It is officially prohibited to foul the streets this way, but in the more crowded quarters like the Subura, it still happens. The savvy Roman pedestrian knows to keep an eye and ear alert. Navigating these lively streets, our senator and his small retinue make their way toward the civic heart of the city, the Roman Forum. Here the narrow lanes broaden into an open public square paved in travertine. Even before reaching it, one can sense the energy ahead, the babble of many voices, the occasional blare of a trumpet signaling some official procession. Then, emerging from a colonnaded side street, they step into the Forum Romanum itself, the very center of Rome's public life. It is a grand and bustling space. All around rise the facades of monumental buildings, venerable temples with marble columns, the public basilicas where courts and business dealings occur, and towering honorary columns and arches. The morning sun has just begun to slant into the Forum Valley, illuminating the tops of structures, while the square below still lies in pleasant, cool shadows. Already the Forum teems with people. Senators in their white togas, edged with purple, make their way to the Curia, Senate House, on the north side, some briskly, others lingering to speak with colleagues or listen to petitioners. A cluster of white-robed priests from the Temple of Saturn lead a bleating sheep toward the altar, preparing for a morning sacrifice that will soon send a curl of smoke heavenward. Near the center of the plaza, an orator has mounted the rostra, the speaker's platform decorated with ship prows, and is addressing a ring of attentive listeners, perhaps arguing a legal case in front of a magistrate or drumming up support for a proposed piece of legislation. His voice rises in practiced cadences over the background din, and now and again the crowd murmurs or chuckles in reaction to his rhetorical flourishes. At the edges of the Forum's paved square, under the cool porticos of the Basilica Julia, merchants set out their wares on small tables. One money changer sits behind a wooden counter covered in coins from various provinces, exchanging foreign currency for Roman denarii, and taking a small commission, of course. Another table displays writing supplies, papyrus scrolls, ink, and reed pens for any literate passerby in need. A bookseller's scribe stands by a stack of freshly copied scrolls of the latest popular poetry, calling out their titles to entice buyers. Everywhere one looks, but some small transaction or negotiation is taking place. Here a housewife haggles with a poulterer over the price of a fat hen. There a pair of architects examine a wax tablet of plans, gesturing toward a half-built basilica nearby as they confer about its design. Not all business in the Forum is commercial. Scattered about are informal clusters of citizens engaged in lively conversation, gossiping about the latest news in the city. Have you heard? The governor of Syria is said to be on trial for corruption. Or debating the merits of a speech delivered in the Senate yesterday, or speculating on the outcome of an upcoming gladiatorial game. In one corner, a group of old men in worn togas sits on the steps of a monument, playing a casual game of dice to pass the time. Their coarse laughter suggests a long-standing friendship. A few yards away, an impatient line of litigants and advocates forms outside a magistrate's tribunal in the basilica, waiting for the court to open, some shifting from foot to foot, rehearsing arguments under their breath, others leaning on marble columns with an air of bored resignation. The entire Forum is like a grand theater of public life, with senators, equestrians, plebeians, and slaves each playing their part. Amid all this, our senator proceeds through the throng, occasionally stopping when hailed by a peer or a hopeful client. He exchanges polite words with a former consul about a coming Senate meeting, nods to a pair of Vestal virgins, priestesses of Vesta, gliding by in their distinctive white veils, and pauses to allow a team of oxen pulling a cart of marble slabs to trundle past. Construction never ceases in growing Rome. By now, the sun has climbed higher, and the shadows in the Forum are shrinking. The marble surfaces of temples and arches glow honey gold in the morning light. It promises to be a warm day. Vendors with clay jugs move through the crowd crying, "Aqua, Aqua Frigida, selling cups of cool water drawn from the city's public fountains for a refreshing sip. As the morning wears on toward midday, many Romans begin to conclude the day's formal business. The law courts aim to finish cases by the noon hour. Magistrates often adjourn their public duties. Shopkeepers think about closing for a while to grab a bite. The sun is now high and bright, and the bustling city takes on a more languid mood. Those who can afford it seek shade and a rest. Our senator, after a busy morning of meetings and correspondence, perhaps in the Senate or at the Temple of Concord where the Treasury is located, supervising some financial matter, feels the pang of hunger and the weight of the day's heat. It is time for the prandium, the midday meal or snack, and perhaps a brief respite. All across Rome, similar thoughts occur. In the Forum, stall owners hand off their remaining wares to apprentices and slip away for a quick lunch. Some Romans head home to eat, while others prefer to pick up something from a food vendor or a thermopolium, a small cook shop akin to a modern fast food stand. Our shopkeeper friend from the Subura, having sold fruit at his market stall since dawn, closes up his booth. With a few coins earned from the morning's trade, he decides to treat himself to a hot snack. He ducks into a nearby thermopolium, an L-shaped counter embedded with jars of stew and wine. The shop's owner, a portly Greek with a stained apron, ladles him a bowl of lentil porridge and a slice of bread spread with garlic cheese. The shopkeeper eats standing as most customers do, blowing on the steaming porridge to cool it. Around him, a small crowd of other common folk jostles at the counter. A couple of messengers, a laborer still dusty from carrying sacks in the forum, and a pair of scribes from a lawyer's office. They exchange a few pleasantries about the weather, heat's coming on early today, or a jest about the laborer's obvious appetite. The food is simple but satisfying, and the shopkeeper washes it down with a cup of diluted red wine, pleasantly tart and cool. Meanwhile, our senator also takes a light prandium. He has returned to his elegant domus on the Palatine, a short walk from the forum's hubbub, and finds awaiting him a platter of cold tidbits prepared by the kitchen slaves, some sliced roast chicken left over from yesterday's dinner, a few olives and figs, and a cup of diluted Falernian wine. In the shaded peristyle garden of his home, he reclines on a couch and nibbles at this small meal. A mild breeze ruffles the ivy and brings relief from the noon sun. His wife joins him with her own plate of fruit and cheese. They converse quietly about the day's minor events. She shares a bit of gossip about a neighbor's new mosaic floor. He mentions an amusing case he heard in the law courts. Their children, having finished lessons with their tutor, scamper into the garden to grab bites of bread and sweet dates. For a short while, the household enjoys a gentle pause, a meridiatio, midday rest, during which the master might even close his eyes and doze for a few minutes to refresh himself. In many Roman homes, especially during summer, this was common, a brief siesta in the hottest part of day. On the streets, the tempo has shifted. The frantic push of the morning eases. Many shops remain closed in early afternoon. A relative quiet falls over some neighborhoods, broken only by the rumble of an ox cart making a delivery, or the distant shout of children at play. In the Subura, Some exhausted workers take a nap in whatever sliver of shade they can find, perhaps against a warehouse wall or under the awning of a shop. Even the dogs curl up and pant lazily rather than bark. Rome is catching its breath. Part 2: Afternoon, Leisure, and the Baths. After the brief lull of noon, Rome awakens once more in the early afternoon, this time devoted not to work, but to leisure. The fierce heat of midday has begun to ebb. A faint breeze races off the Tiber, rustling the awnings over shop fronts. Gradually, people emerge from their homes and shaded retreats, refreshed from their lunch and short rest. There is a subtle shift in the city's mood. The urgency of morning business yields to a more relaxed, convivial atmosphere. It is now around the 8th hour, about 2 p.m., and for many Romans, this is the most anticipated part of the day. On a typical day like this, one destination draws citizens of all stripes: the public bathhouses, or thermae. Going to the baths is a beloved daily ritual in Rome, a blend of hygiene and socializing, exercise and idling, all in one. Our senator, having eaten and rested, prepares to head to his favorite bath complex. He dons a light, unbelted tunic, setting aside the formal toga until evening, and takes with him a small container of olive oil and a strigil, which a personal slave carries along with towels. The bathhouse he frequents is one of the grand imperial establishments, not far from the Forum, perhaps the splendid baths of Trajan perched on the Oppian Hill. Meanwhile, across town in the Subura, our shopkeeper friend also decides to treat himself to an afternoon bath at a more modest neighborhood balneum. He doesn't have a personal attendant to carry his items, but he wraps a towel and a little oil flask in a bundle under his arm and heads out with a neighbor. Cleanliness and a bit of relaxation are small luxuries available to rich and poor alike in Rome, for the baths charge only a token fee, typically a quadrans, the smallest coin, for entry, and often even that is subsidized by wealthy patrons or the emperor. Children can enter free. Thus, as the afternoon wears on, streams of people converge on bathhouses all over the city. Let us follow the senator to the baths of Trajan, one of the city's larger bathing complexes, perched above the Colosseum. As he approaches, the exterior of the building comes into view, an enormous brick facade with arched windows, surrounded by landscaped gardens and promenades. Outside the entrance, vendors take advantage of the daily crowds. A fruit seller has set up a stall, offering figs and pears to bathgoers seeking a snack. Another entrepreneur sells cups of cool sherbet, made from snow and nectar, to ward off the lingering heat. A steady hum of anticipation surrounds the baths. This is a place not just to wash, but to unwind and socialize. The senator pays his tiny fee at the door, a quadrans dropped into a box, and steps into the first chamber, the apoditerium or changing room. It's a spacious hall lined with rows of cubbyholes and wall niches for clothes. Light filters in from high windows, illuminating a mosaic floor decorated with playful sea creatures, fitting for a house of baths. The air is warm and slightly steamy even here. Dozens of Romans are in various stages of undress around the room. The senator hands his garments to his personal slave, who will stand guard by a wall. Bathhouses are notorious for petty theft of unattended clothing. Stripped down now to just a loincloth, the senator feels the warm air on his skin and already a sense of ease. Not far away, our shopkeeper is experiencing a similar transition in a smaller, more crowded apoditarium of his local balneum. He ties up his tunic and belongings in a bundle and wedges it into a corner of a shelf. Lacking a servant, he must trust the gods and the eyes of fellow regulars to keep his things safe from pilfering. Like most common bathers, he wears nothing now but a simple loincloth around his waist. At first, he felt shy about disrobing in front of others, but he's long since used to it. In the balmy air, everyone is equal in bare skin. Distinctions of wealth and status largely set aside, at least for the moment. From the changing room, the senator steps into the open courtyard of the baths, the palaestra. Here is the exercise ground, open to the sky and ringed by a colonnade. The afternoon sun bathes the space in light, but an arcade provides shade around the perimeter for those resting. A cacophony of sounds greets him, the shouts of men training and playing. Off to one side, a group of younger men are engaged in a ball game. They fling and catch a large leather ball in a game of trigon. 3 players standing in a triangle, zinging the ball at one another with swift, tricky passes. Missed catches provoke laughter and mild taunts. Nearby, a pair of burly legionaries on leave grapple in a friendly wrestling match on the sand, each trying to pin the other. A small crowd cheers them on, clapping whenever one manages a clever hold or flip. Under another section of colonnade, older men prefer gentler exercise. Some swing lead-weighted, hand-held dumbbells in rhythmic motions, or practice at throwing a discus just to keep the muscle memory, while a few simply stroll in conversation, using the palaestra as a social walking court. Our senator, being of middle age and not eager to strain himself too much today, decides on moderate exercise. He joins a companion in tossing a lightweight ball back and forth, not the strenuous trigon game of youths, but a simple catch to loosen his limbs. As they do, he chats with his friend, an old comrade from the Senate, about trivial matters, the weather, their mutual acquaintances' doings, the latest scuttlebutt about the emperor's upcoming trip to the provinces. They punctuate their talk with grunts as they throw and catch the ball. Sweat soon beads on their foreheads, and after a quarter hour or so, the senator feels pleasantly warmed and limber. After some light exercise, the senator is ready to proceed to the heart of the bathing ritual, the baths themselves. He moves next to the tepidarium, the warm room, leaving behind the bright sun of the palaestra. The tepidarium is a lofty chamber designed to acclimate bathers gradually to heat. Its marble floor is pleasantly warm underfoot, heated by the hypocaust, an underfloor heating system. The room is dimmer, lit by bronze oil lamps and shafts of hazy light from high windows. The walls are decorated with painted frescoes of dolphins and sea nymphs frolicking in waves, and a sweet aroma of mixed herbs, perhaps lavender and rosemary, lingers in the air. Here the senator reclines on a stone bench for a few minutes, allowing the warmth to seep into his muscles. An attendant slave of the baths steps over and offers to rub him with oil. The senator agrees, and the attendant pours a small amount of fragrant olive oil onto the senator's shoulders and back, then massages it into his skin. This is both relaxing and will aid the cleansing process to come, as the oil absorbs dirt and sweat. The senator closes his eyes for a moment, enjoying the soothing kneading on his neck and arms. He can hear the low murmur of other bathers conversing, two merchants quietly discussing a grain deal, and in a corner, a tutor quizzing a young pupil on some geometry. Some used the tepidarium as a comfortable lounge to conduct a bit of business or education. Fully warmed and lightly oiled, the senator proceeds to the next room, the caldarium or hot room. Pushing through a heavy wooden door, he enters a space filled with thick steam. At first it's hard to see. The air quivers with heat above the surface of a large hot water pool in the center. Around the pool, marble columns support a vaulted ceiling, and through the mist, one can make out the shapes of fellow bathers lounging in the water or sitting on the steps that lead into it. The senator steps carefully. The floor is wet and can be slippery, and descends into the pool. The water is nearly scalding, but he grits his teeth and submerges up to his chest. An enveloping wet heat closes around him. In the caldarium, one can soak and let the heat draw out every tension. Some men simply wallow silently, eyes half closed, savoring the sensation. Others cluster in twos or threes along the pool's edge, talking in low voices. A pair of barbers move about the edges of the room, offering shaves and hair trims to those who want grooming. One young dandy is currently seated on a stool, chin up, as the barber expertly razors off his stubble through the steam. Across the city, in his humbler bathhouse, our shopkeeper sits in a much smaller caldarium, essentially a steamy sauna room lined with benches and a small tub of hot water. He and a friend splash hot water on themselves and trade town gossip as they sweat. The friend jokes that they are like sausages being simmered, and the shopkeeper laughs, wiping his face. The heat is intense, but after a morning of labor, it feels deeply cleansing. They don't linger overly long. The limited space means others are waiting to take their turn. Emerging from the hot bath, the senator moves to a low bench and signals for the next part of the regimen. A bath attendant or his own slave, who stands ready with towel and strigil, now helps him with the strigiling. The senator stands while the servant takes a curved metal strigil and gently but firmly scrapes it along the senator's arms, back, and legs. The oil that was applied, now mixed with perspiration and grime, is sloughed off, leaving the skin gleaming pink and clean. The strigil makes a soft shuck sound with each stroke. The senator inspects the edge of the blade after a few passes and sees, with satisfaction, the grayish, oily film removed from his body, all the dirt of the day gone. The attendant rinses the strigil and continues until the senator's body is thoroughly scraped and refreshed. Our shopkeeper does the same for himself back in his bathhouse's changing area. He borrowed a strigil from the bathhouse rack and now drags it over his arms and shoulders, doing his best to reach his back. A kindly older bather sees him struggling and offers, "Friend, let me do your back." In the camaraderie of the baths, such small courtesies are common. The shopkeeper gratefully agrees, returning the favor for the older man in turn. Both joke that they are shedding a full layer of sabura dust from their skin. Now comes the final and most bracing phase, the frigidarium, or cold room. From the steamy heat, the senator moves to a chamber that feels shockingly cool. In the large baths of Trajan, the frigidarium is an elegant circular hall with a deep, chilly plunge pool fed by the aqueducts. The senator steels himself at the pool's edge and then takes the plunge, quite literally. He jumps into the cold water and submerges completely. The cold hits like a shock, making him gasp as he surfaces. But moments later, his blood sings with invigoration. His skin, flushed from the caldarium, now contracts pleasantly in the cool. He swims a few strokes across the pool. A couple of younger men are laughing like schoolboys as they dare each other to dive under and touch the pool's bottom. Across the way, an older gentleman simply descends via steps and stands neck deep, arms folded, bearing the cold with stoic determination. The senator spends only a short while in the frigidarium, just enough to cool down and close the pores. Climbing out, he feels reborn. His body is tingling and completely relaxed, as clean as it ever will be. Our shopkeeper's bathhouse lacks a true frigidarium, but it has a small fountain of unheated water in the courtyard. Following local custom, he fills a basin and pours the cold water over himself with a yelp, a mini deluge that causes him to hop in surprise. He and his neighbor share a hearty laugh at their own reactions. Simpler facilities or not, the effect is much the same. He feels refreshed and invigorated. Now clean and renewed, many Romans choose to linger in the baths for a while, treating the complex like a social club or community center. The senator wraps himself in a linen towel and moves to a balneum, a sort of bathhouse lounge. Here, under a covered walkway opening onto a garden, men recline on benches or stroll about cooling off. The senator's slave brings him a cup of chilled wine mixed with a little honey, available from a bathhouse vendor, which he sips contentedly. Groups of friends are chatting all around. One cluster of middle-aged men is deep in a game of tabula, a board game similar to backgammon, the dice clicking on the wooden board, and occasional groans or cheers punctuating their conversation. Elsewhere, some youths toss around a leather ball casually, no one minding if it rolls near their feet. Two philosophers, recognizable by their untrimmed beards and animated hand gestures, sit on the edge of a fountain debating ethics in raised voices, to the amusement of those around them. The bath attendant slaves move through the crowd, offering services like ear cleaning or massage for a small tip. The atmosphere is leisurely and convivial, a microcosm of Roman social life. Meanwhile, not every Roman's idea of fun involved racing or combat. Many preferred gentler entertainments at the theater. The city boasted permanent venues like the Theater of Pompey and the Theater of Marcellus, where daytime performances were common. Crowds would gather under canvas awnings to watch comedies by Plautus or Terence, or to enjoy pantomime dances and musical concerts. Actors donned elaborate masks and costumes to play out scenes that made audiences roar with laughter, or in the case of tragedies, fall hushed with suspense. A good comedy, full of clever wordplay, mistaken identities, and slapstick humor, could captivate a Roman crowd just as much as a chariot race. Vendors wandered the aisles here too, selling dates and nuts to munch as people enjoyed the show. For those averse to the blood of the arena, the theater offered an escape into myth, satire, or farce. On a given afternoon, one might hear the applause and laughter from a packed theater compete with the cheering from the circus, each a testament to the Romans' love of being entertained in all forms. If today happened to be a festival day, the Circus Maximus might have been filled with 150,000 roaring spectators, all eyes glued to the chariot races. One can imagine the scene in vivid detail. At the center of the circus stands the long spina, the central barrier adorned with statues and obelisks, around which the chariots thunder. The competitors, each driving a team of 4 horses, quadrigae, line up in the starting gates at one end of the track. The crowd is a sea of color, many wearing or waving the scarves of their favorite racing factions, the reds, greens, blues, or whites. There is palpable tension in the moments before the start. Suddenly, a trumpet blares and a magistrate drops a white cloth. The starting signal. The gates swing open and the chariots surge forward in a blur of motion and dust. The thunder of hooves and the creak of wheels drown out even the crowd's roar for an instant. Each charioteer, standing braced in his lightweight cart, leans low and urges his horses onward, whips cracking in expert rhythm. They hurtle down the straight toward the first turn. As they approach the mete, the tight turning posts at each end of the oval, the real danger begins. The led chariot, let's say of the blue faction, clings to the inside, trying to shave the turn as closely as possible. Just behind, the green faction driver presses aggressively, hoping to overtake. The horses sweep into the curve at breakneck speed. The crowd rises, holding its breath. This is the most perilous moment. With remarkable skill, the blue driver navigates the turn, wheels barely missing the stone post. But behind him, the green charioteer is not so fortunate. His outer wheel clips the meta with a sharp crack. In an instant, wood splinters fly, and the green chariot flips onto its side. The driver is pitched out violently onto the track, tumbling in a cloud of sand. Gasps and cries erupt from tens of thousands of spectators as they witness the crash. Track attendants, in vivid tunics, sprint forward even as the race continues, dodging between hurtling chariots to drag away the wreckage and coax the panicked green horses to a stop. Meanwhile, the remaining teams maneuver around the chaos. A red faction driver swerves skillfully, the wheels of his cart narrowly avoiding the fallen green charioteer, while the blue faction seizes the chance to extend its lead. The race goes on, 7 laps in total, each lap marked by the flipping of dolphin-shaped lap counters atop the spina so the crowd can keep track. By lap 5, the excitement in the stands is feverish. Faction supporters scream themselves hoarse, straining with each turn as if their sheer will could speed their favorite. Gamblers clutch their waxed betting tablets, sweating as they recalculate odds after the green's elimination. Some fans exchange heated barbs about the skills of the drivers, fortunes favoring the blues today. No, it's skill. Look how tightly Scorpus takes the corners. The noise is a constant wall of sound, roaring cheers, groans of disappointment, and the ever-present rumble of hooves echoing off stone. On the final lap, it's a neck-and-neck contest between the blue and red factions. The 2 chariots fly down the backstretch one last time, wheels nearly locking as the red driver makes a daring attempt to pass. The audience is on its feet, 100,000 voices rising to a deafening pitch. At the last turn, the blue team maintains a slight edge and barrels into the home straight. In a final burst of speed, horses straining, drivers leaning in, the blue chariot crosses the finish line, just half a length ahead of the red. The circus explodes in jubilation on one side and agony on the other. The victorious charioteer, flushed and dust-covered, stands tall in his speeding cart and raises his whip in triumph. Slowing his foaming horses, he takes a victory lap around the track to riotous applause, while the defeated drivers trail behind, shaking their heads. The blue faction partisans are delirious with joy. Blue banners and scarves whip the air, and some fans literally dance on the benches. On the opposite side, red faction supporters grumble and sling a few playful insults at their blue rivals. Wait till next time. All the spectators know they've witnessed a thrilling race. As the excitement winds down, many linger in the stands discussing every turn and mishap, reluctant to return to daily cares. Such afternoons at the races are a communal thrill, a mass entertainment that unites rich and poor in shared emotion. For a short time, all of Rome focuses on the same spectacle, hearts pounding in unison. These grand events, though not everyday occurrences, are regular enough, especially during festival seasons, to be part of the normal rhythm of life. Families recount the day's races over dinner. Children reenact them with toy chariots in the alleyways. Bettors collect their winnings, or rue their losses, at local taverns that evening. The races, along with theater shows and gladiatorial games, form the backdrop of excitement that punctuates Roman's workaday world. On normal days, when no spectacles or shows are scheduled, Romans fill the afternoon hours with more low-key pastimes. Strolling through the Forum or along the shaded porticos of the Field of Mars is a popular choice, people watching and chatting with acquaintances along the way. Many head to the baths, as we've seen, or engage in friendly games of dice. Children play on the streets. One can often hear their lilting sing-song as they skip rope or play nuts, a game tossing walnut shells into a small hole in a quiet corner. Others might take this time to run personal errands, visiting a barber for a haircut or shave, stopping by a bookseller's stall to browse new scrolls of literature, or consulting a fortune teller sitting by the temple of Isis for a hint of what the future holds. The city offers countless small diversions. By late afternoon, the sun's intensity softens and the day begins to tilt toward evening. Bathgoers, thoroughly relaxed and clean, drift out of the thermae with damp hair and glowing skin. Their bodies are tired in the best way, and they carry themselves with that loose, unhurried gait that comes after a good long soak. Shopkeepers reopen their shutters briefly to capture any late-day business, but many folks are now more concerned with heading home to prepare for supper. The light over Rome turns a burnished gold, and the shadows of columns and pediments stretch long across the streets. It is one of the loveliest times of day, the hora vespertina, or evening hour, when the heat abates and a gentle light bathes the city's facades. Our senator, refreshed from his bath and perhaps a massage, walks home through streets that are alive with a renewed bustle, but this time it's the bustle of anticipation for the evening, not the stress of work. Slaves from countless households hurry through the lanes carrying fresh vegetables, loaves of bread, or jugs of wine bought in the markets, headed back to cook the family dinner. The smells of these raw ingredients, ripe tomatoes, earth-still carrots, pungent onions, and garlic, mix in the air as the cooks pass by. Here and there, smoke begins to curl from the chimney vents of neighborhood bakeries, firing up to bake the last batches of bread or placenta, savory pastries, for supper. A group of musicians, hired for a private dinner party, trots by with lyres and flutes in hand, on their way to entertain the guests of a wealthy noble that night. The city is gearing up for the social delights of the evening. Part 3: The Evening Meal. From Banquet to Hearth. As the sun dips toward the western horizon, the city of Rome transitions into evening. After the exertions and busyness of the day, a gentle anticipation fills the air. It is time for the main meal. In households across Rome, rich and poor alike, preparations for dinner are underway. Lamps are being lit as dusk approaches, casting a warm golden glow in kitchens and dining areas. The appetizing scents of cooking begin to drift from doorways into the streets, the rich aroma of bread baking anew, lentils boiling in a pot, a fish grilling over coals, a savory stew simmering with herbs. Each neighborhood is perfumed by its own blend of evening fare. In the luxurious domus of our senator on the Palatine, tonight's dinner is a formal affair, essentially a small banquet. The senator and his wife have invited several guests: a neighboring senator and his wife, an old friend from the equestrian order, and perhaps a notable Greek scholar in town, whom the senator wishes to honor. Such a gathering is an important social event, showcasing the host's hospitality and refinement. The house has been abuzz with activity for hours in preparation. In the culina, the kitchen, a team of enslaved cooks and scullions labors in the heat of multiple hearths. Earlier in the afternoon, the chief cook went to the markets with a hefty purse to secure prime ingredients: a fresh sea bass from the fishmonger, young chickens, fine peaches from the countryside, and a variety of spices and imported delicacies. Now these ingredients are being transformed into elegant dishes. One slave fans the charcoal under a bronze brazier where a rich stew of dormice and nuts is bubbling. Another carefully bastes a roasting piglet with honey and wine. On a side table, a junior cook grinds pepper, cumin, and coriander in a mortar, their sharp fragrance tickling the nose. Hanging on the wall are jars of the ubiquitous fish sauce garum, ready to be splashed into various dishes. The kitchen is a realm of controlled chaos, the crackle of fires, the clatter of pans, the cook's constant orders. Despite the bustle, the staff works with practiced coordination, mindful that their master expects nothing short of excellence. The reward for all this effort will be the praise, or at least contentment, of the diners, and perhaps some leftover treats for the kitchen slaves to share later. In the grand triclinium, dining room, the setting is nearly complete. This elegant room, one of several in the house, opens onto the columned garden and is decorated for comfort and style. The floor is adorned with a fine mosaic pattern of intertwining vines. 3 broad couches, triclinia, each piled with cushions, are arranged in a U shape around a low, polished table. These couches will accommodate 9 people, 3 per couch, in the customary reclining position for dining. The places of honor have been mentally assigned. The senator as host will occupy the upper position on the left couch, with the most distinguished guest next to him. Slaves finish setting the table with the best silverware and dishes. The tableware itself is a display of the host's wealth: silver plates engraved with mythological scenes, drinking goblets of blown glass tinted a delicate green, and serving platters gilded around the edges. Little detail is overlooked. Even the drinking water has been chilling with snow in the cellar to be perfectly refreshing. In one corner of the room, out of the way, a pair of household slave musicians quietly tune a lyre and a double flute. They will provide gentle music during the meal. As twilight descends, the guests arrive one by one at the senator's domus. They are greeted in the lamplit atrium by the host and hostess, who stand ready in gracious welcome. The senator has traded his daytime toga for a soft evening robe, and his wife is draped in an elegant stola of deep blue linen with a necklace of gleaming amber beads around her neck. When the first guests, the neighboring senator and his wife, enter through the tall bronze door, they are met with warm smiles and kisses on the cheek. Salvete, amici. Welcome, friends. The host's wife compliments the lady guest on her pearl hairpin. The guest returns a kind word about the lovely jasmine scent in the atrium. The hostess had directed slaves to scatter fresh jasmine petals in the entryway. Soon, all invitees have gathered. A gentle bell is rung, and a slave announces that dinner is served. The company moves to the triclinium, each finding their indicated place on the couches. In ancient Roman fashion, they will dine reclining on their left side, propped on cushions, facing the low table. The host's couch, the lectus medius, holds him, the Greek scholar, and one other guest of honor. The other couches accommodate the rest. Slaves circulate immediately with bowls of perfumed water for guests to dip their fingers and wipe the day's dust from hands. One was said to be a practical and polite ritual before eating. Another slave offers each diner a delicate little towel for drying fingers and face. Thus cleansed and comfortable, they all settle in. Dinner begins with the gustatio, or appetizers. Platters are brought to the table laden with small delicacies. There are oysters on the half shell, freshly shucked and served with a dash of garum and a squeeze of lemon, a luxury transported on ice from the distant coast. There are also tiny gustum dishes of olives, black and green, marinated in herbs, and pickled mushrooms in a tangy brine. The host's personal favorite, ova spongia ex lacte, the little honey-sweet custards that resemble spongy egg bites, are presented warm in bite-sized pieces. As the guests begin to sample these treats, the host signals for wine to be poured. A special vintage of white wine from the Falernian region is being served with the gustatio. It's been diluted with chilled water from snow. True to Roman custom, they never drink wine neat. A slave moves around with a graceful jug, filling each silver cup halfway. The conversation, which initially concerned trivial pleasantries, grows more lively as the food and wine work their charm. The Greek scholar, delighted by the oysters, quotes a humorous line from Homer about eating the sea's fruit, which makes the table chuckle. The neighboring senator compliments the host on the fine seasoning of the olives, sparking a gentle debate on whether Sardinian or Spanish olives have a better flavor. All the while, the background music begins, a soft, lilting melody on the lyre, accompanied by the faint, reedy notes of the flute. It provides a pleasant ambiance, blending with the low murmur of conversation. While the elites are feasting in style, across town in a very different setting, our shopkeeper's family is preparing a far more modest supper. Their entire apartment is one small room at the top of an insula, and in one corner a simple hearth glows with cooking coals. The shopkeeper's wife has been hard at work since late afternoon, tending a vegetable stew over the little fire. In a clay pot, she has combined lentils with onions and greens, whatever she could afford at the market, and seasoned it with a dash of garum and some garden herbs. It's a humble one-pot meal, but nourishing enough. On a wooden board, she slices a loaf of coarse bread, part of the grain dole allotment they received and baked earlier. The children, a boy of 12, a girl of 8, and a toddling baby, are already seated on low stools around the makeshift family table, just a sturdy plank atop 2 barrels. The older boy fidgets, ravenous after a day of running errands and playing street games. The little girl sleepily cradles a rag doll, eyelids already drooping. The father returns home just as the stew is ready, climbing the many flights of stairs with tired steps. He enters their cramped abode to the welcoming smell of dinner and the even more welcome chorus of Papa's home from the children. He sets down the small coin purse he earned from the day's fruit sales and stretches his sore back, then gives his wife a kiss on the cheek and peeks into the stew pot with an approving grin. The family cannot afford meat or fancy delicacies, but tonight there's a bit of a treat. The mother managed to buy a small piece of smoked sausage, which she has diced and added to the stew for flavor. With everyone gathered, the mother ladles the thick lentil stew into a few earthenware bowls. They have only 2 bowls, so she serves the children first, then refills for herself and her husband once the kids have taken some. It's common in poor families to share or take turns with dishes. Before eating, the father leads a simple ritual. He takes a pinch of the stew and a crust of bread and tosses them into the brazier's flame, offering a brief prayer to the Larrys and Penates, the household gods, in gratitude for the meal. The family then begins to spoon the stew eagerly. It's hearty and hot, and the children especially slurp it up with enthusiasm. By Roman custom, even this poor family practices some table manners. The mother gently reminds the boy not to stuff his mouth too full, and the father helps the little girl tear her bread into pieces to dip properly. They drink water tonight. Wine is an occasional luxury for them. As they eat, they talk over the events of the day. The boy excitedly describes a stray dog he saw steal a piece of meat from a vendor and how the vendor chased it through the forum, to everyone's amusement. The girl shows a bit of writing she learned at the makeshift school run by a former soldier in a nearby courtyard. She scrawled her name on a wax tablet, and her parents praise her proudly. The baby claps at the general merriment, smearing lentils on his cheeks. In this simple one-room home, there is no fine furniture or decoration, but there is warmth, a family sharing the little they have, ending the day together. Back at the senator's banquet, the first course dishes are cleared away by silent-footed slaves. The diners recline back, chatting comfortably as they await the main course. A basin is brought around for a quick finger rinse, and fresh napkins are provided where needed. Presently, the prima mensa, main course, arrives in a grand procession from the kitchen. A large platter bears the centerpiece, a roasted suckling pig presented whole with a sprig of parsley in its mouth. Its skin is perfectly browned and crackling, having been glazed with honey. The guests murmur in admiration. The chief cook himself, sweating from the kitchen fires, comes in to perform the carving, a task of honor. With swift and expert slices, he portions the succulent meat for each diner, revealing as he does so a surprise. The pig has been stuffed with a mixture of spiced forcemeat, figs, and pine nuts that now tumble out onto the platter. Exquisite, exclaims one guest. It's a show dish meant to delight both eye and palate. Alongside the roast pork, other dishes are placed on the table. A grilled sea bass garnished with coriander and lemons, bowls of stewed apricots, and plums to accompany the meats, sautéed wild mushrooms in a rich wine sauce, and a platter of mixed legumes sprinkled with fresh herbs. The variety of colors and aromas is mouth-watering. The guests dine with gusto, but also with decorum. They use spoons for soupy foods and their fingers for meats. As is customary, forks are not in common use, though table knives are provided for cutting. Slaves circulate with towels and water so that everyone can keep their fingers reasonably clean between bites. The wine flows more freely now. Red wine of a robust vintage is served, still diluted but more generously, and toasts become more frequent. They toast to the host's health, to the prosperity of Rome, to amicitias, friendship. At one point, the host raises his cup and proposes a toast to his learned Greek guest, whose wisdom, he jests, elevates our discourse even higher than this excellent pork. The table laughs and drinks to the scholar, who modestly waves off the praise with a grin. A gentle warmth fills the room, partly from the wine, partly from the sense of conviviality. The slave musicians play a light, sweet tune to complement the diner's contentment, the notes of the lyre melding with the humming conversation. Over at the insula, the family's earthen lamp has been lit, casting a flickering glow on the plaster walls. The stew has been nearly devoured, and the father contentedly leans back against the wall, patting his stomach. The little girl fights to keep her eyes open as her mother combs out her hair with a simple bone comb. The boy has found the last scrapings of lentils at the bottom of the pot and happily licks the spoon. Dinner might be over, but the evening isn't quite done. The children look expectantly at their father. It's time for a bit of storytelling, a beloved nightly ritual in many humble Roman families who cannot afford hired entertainment or lavish diversions. The father doesn't disappoint. After taking a sip of water, he clears his throat and begins a familiar tale, the legend of Romulus and Remus, the twin founders of Rome. The children have heard it many times, but they snuggle close and listen intently, as if it were new. The father's voice is gentle and rhythmic as he recounts how the infants were set adrift on the river, how a she-wolf discovered them and nursed them, and how eventually Romulus grew up to build the city on the Palatine Hill. As he speaks, the mother quietly gathers and scrubs the bowls with a scrap of cloth, but she too listens, smiling softly at the same parts that always touch her heart, the kindly wolf, the final naming of Rome. By the time Romulus draws his sacred plow line around the hill in the story, the little girl is fast asleep, head in her mother's lap, and the boy's eyelids are heavy. The father ends the tale on a soothing note, describing how the lights of the new city twinkled under the same stars that shine above them now. He then carefully lifts his daughter and lays her on the straw-filled mattress in the corner. The boy crawls under the thin blanket beside his sister. Kissing them both on the forehead, the parents whisper a short goodnight prayer. May the gods guard your dreams, my little ones. Back at the banquet, the main course has been thoroughly enjoyed, and the appetite of even the heartiest guest is sated. But the Romans, being fond of protracted meals, are not done yet. The final phase of the feast arrives, the secunda mensa, or dessert course. Slaves clear the table of meat remnants and bring forth fresh plates, along with trays of sweets and fruits. There are bowls of ripe grapes, figs, and melons, the fruits of late summer. Next appear little honey cakes shaped like leaves and a large dish of dulcia domestica, which are dates stuffed with ground nuts and dipped in honey sesame glaze. The guests exclaim in delight at the assortment. No less than 7 courses, I think, jokes the neighboring senator to the host, recalling the tradition that a proper Roman supper should have at least that many dishes. The host chuckles, waving a hand. Who's counting? Please, enjoy. He himself takes a fig and pops it into his mouth, juice dribbling into his trimmed beard. The ladies favor the honey cakes, delicately nibbling their edges. As dessert is savored, the tone of conversation turns a bit more reflective and mellow. Bellies are full, and some guests recline in a semi-daze of contentment. One quotes a line of Virgil about the pleasures of the simple life. Another counters with a playful Catullus epigram about the virtues of good wine. These literary allusions prompt the Greek scholar, who has been relatively quiet during the meal, politely answering questions about philosophy posed to him, to recite a few lines of Homer in Greek for the table's pleasure. Though not everyone can follow the original language, the cadence and emotion of the verse cast a brief hush over the gathering. When he finishes, the diners applaud softly. Such moments of cultured entertainment often cap off a Roman dinner party, elevating the mood from mere indulgence to something more refined. At length, the host senses it is time to bring the evening to a close. The slaves are beckoned to bring bowls of perfumed water once more. The guests dip their fingers and wipe their mouths, removing the last stickiness of dates and honey. Linen napkins that had been draped over couches to protect them from spills are collected. The air in the triclinium is heady with the mingled scents of wine, perfume, and the fading aroma of roasted meat. The lamp wicks have burned low, casting dancing shadows on the frescoed walls, which depict, appropriately, a reclining Bacchus feasting among vines. One by one, the guests express their hearty thanks to the host and hostess. Gratias tibi, ago. What a marvelous dinner. We are in your debt, says the neighboring senator, raising his cup in a final salute. The host bows his head graciously, insisting it was his pleasure entirely. The hostess sends each guest off with a small gift. A parting favor was customary in some circles. Tonight, it is a pretty little box of candied nuts for the ladies, and for the men a tiny vial of fine cinnamon to sprinkle on their wine at home. And so the guests depart, stepping out into the warm Roman night, thoroughly satisfied. The host's steward has arranged for a few torch-bearer slaves to escort each couple safely to their residence through the dark streets. As they vanish into the moonlit lanes, their laughter and voices gradually recede. Inside the domus, the slaves begin the extensive cleanup, collecting scattered olive pits and chicken bones from the table, sweeping up crumbs, and airing out the triclinium. The senator and his wife, pleasantly weary, retire to their private chambers. They change into soft night tunics and reflect for a few moments on the success of the evening. The conversation was lively, the food well praised, everyone left happy. It is all a host can wish for. They extinguish the hanging bronze oil lamp in their bedroom after uttering a quick prayer of thanks to Juno for the wife and Jupiter for the husband for the good fortune of the day. Not long after, silence envelops the grand house, save for the soft snores of a dozing doorkeeper by the entrance and the quiet crackle of the kitchen hearth being banked for the night. In the tiny Subura apartment, silence also reigns. The children are asleep, the baby nestling against his sister. The father sits for a moment by the window that opens onto the night sky. From this high perch, he can see a slice of stars overhead between the cramped roofs of the insulas. A faint night breeze, mercifully cooler than the stagnant daytime air, ruffles the candle flame on the sill. He and his wife speak in whispers so as not to wake the little ones. They chuckle quietly about the boy's story of the thieving dog and imagine what they might dream about tonight. The mother offers a small clay cup of watered wine to her husband. They manage to save a bit from an old jug. He accepts and takes a sip. It's sour and weak, but in this moment, with his family safe around him, it tastes sweet. Before turning in, they bow their heads together and murmur a prayer to the household spirits and to Vesta. Thank you for this day. Then the father, whose limbs ache from the day's labors, eases himself down onto their straw mattress. The mother, already drowsy from the wine and weariness, curls up beside him, drawing a thin blanket over them both. In moments, these hard-working parents slip into a deep sleep. Their breathing joins the gentle chorus of slumber in the room, the baby's soft whiffling, the daughter's little sigh, the son's occasional restless turning. The single lamp flickers on the table until the oil is nearly spent, then the flame dies out. The insula is dark and still. Part 4. Night falls over Rome's. Night settles upon Rome like a dark velvet cloak, studded with a few flickering torches and the distant glow of stars overhead. In the great city that bustled with so much noise and activity during the daylight hours, an uncanny stillness now prevails. The same streets that were thronged with people and echoing with shouts are mostly empty, hushed, and shadowy. The moon, nearly full this night, casts a silver sheen on the rooftops and alleys. By its light, one can make out the silhouettes of porticos and columns, familiar landmarks now rendered mysterious and serene under the stars. In every insula and domus, doors have been bolted and shutters drawn. As one Roman writer put it, night in the city was like the shadow of a great danger, a time when wise citizens stayed indoors behind secured entrances. The day's commerce and socializing are done. Self-preservation dictates caution after dark. So it is that our shopkeeper's family sleeps soundly behind the simple wooden docker of their apartment, and the senator's household is safely enclosed within the high walls of its courtyard. Through the silent streets, a slight rustling can be heard now and then, perhaps a stray cat slinking along a ledge, or a sudden breeze stirring the leaves of a plane tree by the forum. Yet the city is not entirely devoid of life at night. Here and there, a dim glow or distant sound betrays some activity. For instance, down by the river wharves, longshoremen work by torchlight, unloading a late-arriving barge of grain, laboring through the cool night to avoid the daytime heat, their muffled grunts and the creak of rope pulleys carrying over the water. In another quarter, The low murmur of voices comes from a little tavern, where a few die-hard regulars linger over cups of cheap wine, swapping stories or playing a last game of dice by a smoky lamp. But these are isolated pockets. Generally, in normal times, Romans did not wander the streets at night, unless they had to. There were dangers, pickpockets, and footpads emboldened by the darkness, or simply the hazard of tripping on a loose stone and finding no one around to help. Within the senator's domus, a single guarded lantern burns in the entrance hall, and perhaps a couple in the service wings, where slaves remain awake for any household needs. The family members, however, are all abed. The senator's elegant bedroom is faintly illuminated by the moonlight filtering through a lattice window. He lies on his back in his curtained bed, breathing deeply. The rich supper and wine have given him the gift of heavy, dreamless sleep. In a nearby chamber, his wife sleeps as well, an attendant maid dozing on a mat just outside her door in case she is needed. Downstairs in the atrium, the doorkeeper's slave nods behind the main door, a staff across his lap. Every so often, he rouses at a distant sound, perhaps mistaking a scurrying rat for an intruder. But all is well. He stretches and adjusts his cloak, staying alert as best he can until dawn's relief. Across town, in the cramped insula, the shopkeeper's family slumbers contentedly. The children are curled up together on their straw pallet, the mother and father on theirs. Through the open window, a soft night breeze brings a bit of relief from the lingering summer warmth. The noises of the Subura district that might lull or disturb them are present, but subdued. Far below, a dog barks once at some unseen provocation, and then falls silent. A group of late-night revelers in the street laugh raucously for a moment as they pass, their footsteps echoing between the tall buildings, then fade away. The shopkeeper stirs faintly when the laughter rings out. He opens an eye, half dreaming, then rolls over and drifts back to sleep, one arm protectively resting across his wife's back. The city's night watch, the vigils, makes its rounds through Rome's maze of streets. These are the quasi-police and firemen of the city, about 7,000 strong in cohort divisions, tasked with keeping order after dark. 3 of them walk down the main street of the Subura with lanterns in hand, their sandals scraping softly on the paving stones. At intervals, one taps a long staff on the ground, a warning to any would-be mischief makers that the watch is near. They find a drunk man slumped by a public fountain, too intoxicated to find his way home. The vigils gently help him up and escort him a few blocks to the insula he incoherently indicates is his, more to prevent him from possibly starting a fire by knocking over a lamp than out of pure charity. In another alley, the patrol hears a clatter and rushes to investigate, only to find a pair of stray dogs knocking over clay jars in search of scraps. They shoo the dogs away, right the jars, and continue on. Their biggest concern is fire, with so many wooden structures and open flames in lamps and kitchens. A blaze could race through the tightly packed insulators with devastating speed. Tonight, thankfully, no orange glow or whiff of smoke alerts them to any trouble. One vigil does pause by a quiet shop front. He thought he smelled burning, but a few cautious sniffs convince him it's only a neighbor's banked hearth, not a stray spark. Satisfied, the 3 watchmen adjust their cloaks against the slight midnight chill and press on. Romans also benefited from conveniences in their city that would disappear for centuries after the empire's decline. Their famous aqueducts, for instance, delivered millions of gallons of fresh water each day, feeding public fountains on nearly every block so that even those in tall insulae could fetch clean water easily. A complex sewer system, beginning with the Great Cloaca Maxima, continuously drained waste and stormwater from the city streets into the Tiber River. Many large apartment blocks even had internal plumbing to supply water to lower floor tenants, and shared latrines for sanitation. Such infrastructure was unparalleled in the ancient world, and indeed, later medieval cities would not match some of these public amenities. The availability of public baths, toilets, and flowing water made daily life in Rome, at least in this aspect, surprisingly hygienic and convenient for its time. It enabled the densely packed population to thrive despite challenges. One can imagine a Roman artisan might take for granted the free fountain near his workshop or the organized rubbish collections, not realizing that these urban comforts would become rarities in the ages after Rome's fall. In a sense, the rhythms of Roman daily life were supported by technological and administrative achievements that set a standard for urban living, one whose echoes we see in modern city services today. When we gaze upon the ruins of Ostia's apartment blocks or the worn steps of the Forum today, it's poignant to realize they were once teeming with daily life, as intimate and ordinary as our own. Water splashed in the fountains we now see dry. Children's laughter rang in alleys now silent. The smell of baking bread once issued from brick ovens that stand empty. The continuity of daily routines is arguably what truly connects us to the people of ancient Rome. Grand historical events can sometimes create a sense of distance. Emperors, wars, and politics paint a picture of a world very unlike ours. But imagine a Roman father helping his child practice writing by lamplight. We saw our shopkeeper do just that. Or a hard-working mother worrying whether the stew will be enough to fill her family's bellies. Or a group of co-workers joking during a brief midday break. These scenes could as easily take place in our time as in theirs. Through such everyday vignettes, we come to see the Romans not as marble statues or legendary figures, but as real people who, despite all differences in era and culture, share common humanity with us. Perhaps this is why learning about the quotidian details of Roman life feels so meaningful. The hustle and bustle, the work and the leisure, the small joys and minor woes. They form a bridge across millennia. Across that bridge, we realize that while language, technology, and customs have changed, the fundamental patterns of life remain familiar. People still wake at sunrise, still labor to provide for loved ones, still seek moments of pleasure and relaxation, and still find comfort in a safe home and a warm bed at night. The Romans, with their carpe diem and their evening toasts, understood the value of seizing the day's opportunities and then enjoying its close. And while our focus has been on the city, we must remember that Rome's daily survival depended on labor beyond its walls. Each day, wagon loads and shiploads of supplies flowed into the capital, grain from the fields of Egypt and North Africa, olive oil from Spain, vegetables and fruit from Italian farms, fish from the Mediterranean coasts. Before dawn in the countryside, farmers hitched oxen to carts, fishermen cast their nets along the shore, Millers ground wheat into flour, all to ensure that by morning Rome's markets would be stocked and its bakeries supplied. The empire's vast reach made itself felt in the ordinary Roman's routine. A humble craftsman in the city might breakfast on bread baked from African wheat, spread with honey from Greece. He might light his workshop with a lamp fueled by Spanish olive oil, wear a cloak dyed with Tyrian purple from the Levant, and later attend a gladiator show featuring wild beasts brought from the far-off lands of Asia or Africa. In this way, daily life in Rome, though centered in the local rhythms of one city, was also connected to a global network of commerce and agriculture. The bounty of distant provinces arrived to fill Roman bellies and brighten Roman homes, linking the fate of farmers and traders far away to the everyday routines of Rome's inhabitants. The patterns we observed, waking at dawn, working by day, bathing in the afternoon, dining in the evening, and sleeping under the same stars, were not unique to the particular day we imagined. They repeated day after day, generation after generation, forming a steady cadence throughout centuries of Roman history. A Roman from the Republican era, transported to our imperial day, would find much familiar in these routines, despite the passing of time and changes in fashion. Emperors might come and go, laws and gods might change, as when Christianity supplanted the old religions. But the core beats of life remained resonant: the morning bustle, the afternoon respite, the family supper, the quiet night. Throughout the centuries, the social structure of Rome was evident in those daily activities. We saw how the lives of a wealthy senator and a humble shopkeeper diverged, one reclining in a cushioned triclinium eating delicacies, the other perched on a stool sharing a simple porridge. These differences were real and significant. Yet in the everyday public sphere, their worlds also intersected. Both men visited the same forum, if on different business. Both cleansed themselves in the same public baths, if in different sections. Both relied on the grain from the same state granaries. A striking feature of Rome was this layering of classes living in such proximity. High-born patricians stepped over the same threshold as low-born plebeians when entering the baths. Their slaves often ran into each other at the fountains and markets and exchanged the city's news, which then traveled upward and downward through the social strata. The patron-client system itself tied rich and poor in daily contact, as we saw in the morning salutatio. While status distinctions were fiercely maintained, a senator did not invite a baker to dine at his table after all. The fabric of the city was woven from all these different threads, intermingling on a daily basis. In the later years of the empire, even as political and religious transformations took place, the daily life of the average person changed slowly. The rise of Christianity, for example, gradually altered certain habits. Christian Romans might begin their day with a prayer to the one God instead of a handful of household deities, or end their night not with an offering to the lares, but with a quiet paternoster, Lord's Prayer. Gladiatorial games were eventually abolished in the 5th century under Christian influence, changing the nature of public entertainment. Yet a citizen of that time still spent his day in much the same way, going to work, visiting the baths, which continued to function for a long time, gathering with family at home. The outer aspects of daily routine are remarkably enduring, even as empires rise or fall. As night deepens, we return to our imagination of Rome's sleeping city. In the pre-dawn darkness soon to come, the cycle will quietly begin anew. Bakers will stoke their ovens long before sunrise, their bakery chimneys already wafting the comforting smell of fresh bread into the cool air. The first rooster will crow, perhaps on a farmhouse beyond the walls, or even a stray cockerel kept illicitly in a city courtyard, heralding the approaching dawn. And in 1,000 insula rooms, light sleeping mothers will stir, nudging their husbands that it's nearly time to get up. In the barracks of the Praetorian Guard, a duty trumpeter will rub his eyes and prepare to sound the morning call. Behind the barred shops, tradesmen will awaken and mentally review the tasks of the coming day. Rome will, in a short while, stretch and yawn and start all over again. Thus, in an endless loop of days, was the mighty Roman Empire sustained not only by the grand actions of statesmen and generals, but by the humble and repeated acts of its people. The Eternal City earned its name not just through its monuments and legions, but through the endurance of these everyday patterns of life. As we leave our Roman friends to their dreams and gradually step back from their world, we carry a newfound understanding that in the annals of history, it is often the quiet, persistent rhythm of daily life that underpins all greatness. The sun will rise again on Rome, and with it millions of ordinary folk will rise to live another day, to bake and build, to trade and talk, to laugh and love, to eat and sleep, just as we do in our own time. Now, in the quiet stillness of our imagination, we bid good night to ancient Rome. The last oil lamp has flickered out in the Subura. The moon casts a gentle glow over the slumbering forum. All across the city, from the grandest domus to the humblest insula, people rest, gathering strength for tomorrow. In a few hours, the cycle will begin again with first light. But for now, in this precious hush before dawn, Rome, like the rest of us, dreams. And in those dreams, perhaps, we meet across time and space, sharing the simple human hope that each new day will bring peace, purpose, and a chance to do it all again. Veil Roma. Sleep well. Tomorrow will be another day.